Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic and that you are all having a great day. Don't forget to like the video. It helps out the channel, it helps out the algorithm, and it might even help you out as well. Okay, the last part was a bit of a stretch. And without any further ado, let's jump right into it. Welcome back to Conundrumville, or something along those lines. The cryptocurrency space, the market continues to get nothing but unequivocally, fantastically, amazingly wonderful news. We are, for some reason, and this feels like this will never end at this point. The amount of companies announcing that they are, I know you know where this is going. Announcing that they're buying Bitcoin seems never ending at this point. The weirdest part, at least to me, is that even a lot of these companies announcing things as if they're doing something miraculous, or maybe they're the first ones to ever actually do this. I saw this one and I mean, it gave me an instantaneous headache. I'll give you a little bit of a backdrop and then I'll let you decide for yourself. This must have been 2020, maybe 2021. This was around the time where we were getting a lot of crypto exchanges talking about proof of reserves. Like, did they actually have the money on their platform? And luckily for us, all of the major cryptocurrency exchanges did, or still have, the coins that they said that they had. So they weren't like banks just lying. But a lot of discussion began to float around with like who owned Bitcoin, who owned crypto. I think we started hearing from Tether. It's the first time we got that news years ago, where Tether announced that they were using 15% of their profits to purchase Bitcoin. Tether recently announced that they now have over 100,000 Bitcoin. And keep in mind, asterisk, that's Tether. Then we had news from, I think, one or two other crypto exchanges who were like, yeah, we've also been accumulating Bitcoin. And then I think people were asking Changpeng Zhao and a bunch of other people within the space. This is also roughly around the same exact time where Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Rappel, came forward and was like, yes, I also have some Bitcoin. And people were like, what? You can't do that. You love XRP. So then people were like, The oldest, except for Mt. Gox, crypto exchange that we have, clearly Coinbase must also have some Bitcoin. Coinbase got started around 2012. Bitcoin's price must have been $28. If it was over 100, I'd be confused, like mentally just not even possibly there. So people were asking the people from Coinbase, they got, transparency, how many BTCs do you have? And I think Coinbase or the company or an official came forward and said, we have around like 500 Bitcoin. And I remember saying, if you were here all those years ago, you remember this. I was like, what the fudge are you talking about? You've been around since 2012. You mean to tell me that you acquired, you accumulated 20, 30, 40 million dollars to create a brand new cryptocurrency exchange that is also favored by Fidelity and BlackRock. And you only managed to acquire 500 of these coins that would have cost you, what was it, $5,000, $50,000? So, excuse my French, I've been smelling nonsense for a while now when it comes to this. And then we've had all these other companies. Maybe you miss them. It's been every single day coming forward announcing that they're also buying Bitcoin. And then this news came out and I was like, what? In the news today, a very popular news story. Coinbase's CEO, his name is Brian Armstrong, has stated that his company is apparently buying Bitcoin on a weekly basis. What? But they only bought 500 Bitcoin and they never bought any more after that. Unless someone was lying? Because why wouldn't the largest crypto exchange on the planet by volume, I think Binance is by users, be buying tons of Bitcoin? Remember when I said, I was like, hey, remember Tether? If Tether came out in 2017, 2018, and Tether has 100,000 Bitcoin, how many of you, show of hands, I assume, how many of you believe Coinbase has at least 500,000 to 1 million Bitcoin that they're just not telling people about? A lot of these companies are afraid and aren't afraid of centralization accusations. It's kind of like when you hear that all the rich people are holding all the Bitcoin, and it's like, well, who are the rich people in the space? How can one company get 600,000? You mean to tell me, now we all know this is a lie. You mean to tell me that MicroStrategy was able to acquire 600,000 Bitcoin in 2.5 years? But Coinbase has under 1,000 Bitcoin? I assume Coinbase, and I would even dare say Binance, because Binance is like extremely wealthy. And even the Winklevoss twins, don't forget that one. You can find an old article from 2013, 2014. See, what happened in the olden days is that a lot of people used to brag about being in the cryptocurrency space quite heavily. And the Winklevoss were two of those people. You can find the old articles. And they claimed back then that they held, I think, more than 1% or 3%, I forgot what the number was, of the entire supply. They announced over a decade ago that they had 200,000 Bitcoin. And I remember saying, I think years after, I was like, how many Bitcoin do you think they have? And a lot of people were like, I guess just the original 200,000. They haven't announced anything. And I was like, oh, you're different. Just because they're not, like, it just doesn't. Anyway, long story short, so the news of the day is that Coinbase out of nowhere is buying. Isn't that weird for the first time in a while? He also urged followers to go long on Bitcoin while it is currently approaching a new record high. Apparently, still, we are near $150,000 per BTC. According to the latest data, Coinbase is currently the 10th largest corporate holder of Bitcoin. The dollar value of, no, that's a lie. The dollar value of their Bitcoin holdings is currently under $1 billion. Coinbase started not as a cryptocurrency exchange, but as a Bitcoin exchange. You think this Bitcoin exchange, that was a Bitcoin exchange until 2017, has under $1 billion worth of Bitcoin? You are literally drinking the digital Kool-Aid. It says it lags behind MicroStrategy and Metaplanet. I'm going to ask you one more time. You think Coinbase has less Bitcoin than Metaplanet? As well as Tesla. Yeah, very popular news, and everyone's like, what? I can't believe it. How is this possible? And it's just, sometimes which crypto exchanges stopped acting like banks. But I think realistically, if we figured out that these crypto exchanges had an egregious amount of Bitcoin, a lot more questions would begin to pop up. But yeah, Very popular news. People seem to love it, or the idea that they were buying all the time. Cool. I have a lot more that I want to say, but for the sake of moving on, let's move on. In case any of you happen to miss it, I'm not sure how you could have, but things do happen. The amount of Bitcoin on crypto exchanges continues to collapse in like a very dramatic way. It's almost like this is planned, and the companies and corporations are talking to each other and buying up as much Bitcoin as possible before it goes to 1 million. But that doesn't make any sense, because why would they all be doing it at the exact same time, over 150 companies? That's not logic at all. It says Bitcoin's percent supply on exchanges has dropped below 15%. There's less than 15% of Bitcoin on crypto exchanges for the first time since 2018. Depleting exchange supply and over-the-counter balances are pointing to a supply shock. Bitcoin reserve exchanges have fallen below 15%, suggesting a supply shock as institutional demand from ETF grows. We went over this recently. It is not just the ETFs. It's coming from every single direction. Yes. So as we continue to mosey on through summer, hope everyone's making sure and remembering to drink water. And I say that because like it's hot everywhere. I mean, like not like normal hot. I remember growing up, and I don't know if you remember, I remember having snow in the winter. And I mean, like the moment we hit October, end of October, it was like, oh gosh, it's snowing already, until like February. We're lucky if we get like 3 flurries now. And summertime ends up getting so warm. It's not a joke. I have to text to my friends and I'm like, hey guys, make sure to hydrate, make sure to have some water. One of my friends, I'm not joking, he will message me and go, I slept terribly. I have a crazy headache. And I'm like, did you have water? And he's like, I had some coffee. And I'm like, that's not remotely what water looks or tastes like. And then like 8 hours later, he's like, I feel so much better. And I'm like, what? That's insane. So please, everyone out there, remember to like, I know it sounds crazy, but remember to drink water. I forgot my entire point of that. It was something about normalcy. I don't really remember. Anywho, all the rich people are buying up all the Bitcoin. I mean, we've been going over that at least 80,500 times over the past few months, and apparently Coinbase is just buying 1 Bitcoin per day. I wish I could believe that. Okie dokie. Let's move on. Also, part of my confusion as to why, and I'm not going to stop saying this because it like this is something that we all have to actually discuss, as to why Bitcoin's price isn't at $17 million per coin. Okay, maybe I push a little bit too far, but you understand. We started having news years ago. So, for reference, a lot of you are into crypto, and I would naturally assume all of you, if you're listening, a lot of you have Bitcoin. My soul tells me that all of you, just out of pure logic, because of the news that we're constantly getting. If that's the percentage of people, typically, and I would say Northern Hemisphere, who are actually into Bitcoin or into crypto or are investing in digital assets, what have you, logically, people like to invest. They want to make more money. They want to see where the market ends up going. We started having news about 5 or 6 years ago that one of the core ideas of Bitcoin was that basically fiat currencies would collapse. Surprise, look at what's happening right now. The balance for that, or the imbalance, would basically be that people in charge of money would act interesting and they would continue to inflate the money. They would destroy the deficit. We're seeing it all over the world. We're seeing it with the dollar. We're seeing it with the euro. We're seeing it with the yen. You name it, it's across the board. We are normally, typically in the Northern Hemisphere, we tend to be a bit more isolated from such heavy movements. You might go to the store and see that eggs aren't $4, they're now $6.50. You might see that your rent is raising by $250 year on year. However, in other countries whose economies are worse, their eggs go from 5 eggs from being the equivalent of a US dollar to an entire pillowcase of money. We started hearing that a couple of years ago as well. Remember Turkey, for those of you who missed those news stories. We heard that a lot of people in Turkey were quite frustrated because their currency was collapsing. We heard the nice news stories of people from Dubai and Europe and the States who were traveling to Istanbul, staying at 5-star hotels for $40 a night, and they're like, this is cheaper than my rent. And the news stories about the locals were kind of going unnoticed, where people were saying the equivalent of their rent was around $180 for a small studio in the outskirts of the city. That went up to $3,000 equivalent. And they were like, we can't afford this. Everything's inflating so fast. So we started hearing, this is the context, we started hearing that a lot of Latin American countries, some countries in Eastern Europe, parts of Russia, parts of China, that's where the banned, I'm doing air quotes, you can't see them, the banned news began to pop up. And a bunch of places in Southeast Asia that apparently a lot of their citizens had already begun to make the shift. The entire idea for Bitcoin and crypto is to help the masses. We are the masses. We are the 8 billion. At the core of that are the people who live under hyperinflation, who live under these terrible economic systems that are worse than ours. And ours are pretty already badly off. And they started moving into crypto. This is where the main shift will come from. When you hear me say, I wish more people on the planet got into crypto, I'm talking about this. Bitcoin, Ether, XRP, these things will benefit us, but they will benefit them far more. This is going to be the actual shift in the economy, the digital economy, if you will, that's going to keep crypto around essentially forever. In Bolivia, Bolivians have now started shifting to digital assets as issues tied to inflation have been on the rise in the country. We heard that around El Salvador. We heard, what was the other country? Oh, I'm not going to get it. Crap. It's 3 more northern Latin American countries. So towards the north of the actual continent. I think there were 5 of them. We haven't heard about Bolivia before, but there were 5 of them previously where their citizens were literally, and this is before making Bitcoin as legal tender. These people were like, no, we need to shift, and they were, into using Bitcoin and into using stable coins. You might remember if you were here years ago, the stories about people living rurally or even in cities who had managed to purchase one Bitcoin mining rig. And that's what they were literally using to pay their rent and to pay all this other stuff because their currency had inflated so much. What they were able to mine from one machine was enough to get them through a month. Think about that. And these are old machines. These machines were maybe giving them $2, $3, $4 per month in Bitcoin. Shops and outlets are now accepting payments in digital assets as the Boliviano slides by half its price. Apparently, the Bolivian government is also working on a comprehensive framework for financial technology companies. This usually happens when they're kind of I don't even know what the term forced. They're kind of forced to realize what's going on. This is how we get to hyper Bitcoinization. It's cool to have it for, futures and ETFs and seeing Bitcoin taking a stronghold on every single financial aspect. in traditional finance and all these other markets, but this is how it actually moves forward. Because what ends up happening is, and what will happen, as their currency continues to inflate, people will get sick of it. They'll see that their friend is, and I mean slightly better off than they are. How are you doing it? I swapped my money into Bitcoin a while ago. I swapped my money into Tether. And they'll go, I have to do the exact same thing. When the people, this will sound intense, but when people are able to actually stake Bitcoin themselves, understand what all of this means. Like, it's more powerful than you could possibly imagine. When people are able to, on their phones, on their computers, stake Ether, stake XRP, and stake Bitcoin, Litecoin natively in their countries on their phones without having to rely on a crypto exchange, it's game over for fiat currencies. People then have the power once again. Why would they ever choose, if their stores are accepting it, why would they ever choose to swap their money back into their paper currency? As they go about their day, they go home and turn on the news and they see that their paper currency lost another 5% in value. This is how the world shifts. Bolivians have now started shifting to digital assets as issues tied to inflation in the country continue to rise. According to a report by the central bank in Bolivia, residents in the country are now embracing digital assets amid a rise in inflation and continuous US dollar shortages. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of countries were, I won't use the word forced, but forced, so it's missing the F, to use the US dollar for basically everything. A lot of their economies were destabilized by other countries in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2010s, and 2020s. And basically, they kind of had no choice but to lean on the US dollar as a economic means within their country. The problem is that when the world reserve currency, remember all those things, those warnings that we got from Larry Fink and Jamie Dimon, though he may be a monster, and many other people talking about, hey, can we get the US dollar under control because there's a collapse coming. If the US isn't doing well economically, other countries who are forced to use the US dollar or lean on the US dollar as it loses its own value will also begin to do worse as well. So when they think and collectively say there's another alternative to use, this is how you get proper hyper-Bitcoinization. The central bank report comes after a recent Reuters report citing that residents are now relying more on digital assets than the country's currency. For instance, in the district of the Bolivian city of Cochabamba, some ATMs allow shoppers to swipe their coins for digital assets. Beauty salons offer wow, that's how you do it. Beauty salons are offering discounts to customers if they pay in Bitcoin. And people use Binance accounts to buy fried chicken. Do you I know you do, but do you get the significance of it? Why isn't this on the news? How many of you on your local news or your international news heard about people in Latin America who are choosing to use Bitcoin over their local currency? How many more people per day in Bolivia? Bolivia alone, not even mentioning the other 5 countries who we've been hearing about for years, are choosing daily. It must be hundreds of people every day who are like, I can't keep doing this. I need to have Bitcoin. I need to have another digital currency to be able to survive. It's really like, it's nuts to actually think about that this is happening, and this doesn't hit traditional news, if you will. The country has been facing a rising economic crisis with its reserve of dollar near depletion, inflation at a 40-year high, and fuel shortages causing long lines at the pump. The country's currency has also lost half its value. Jeez Louise. The country's currency has lost half of its own value on the black market since the beginning of the year, with the government holding the official exchange rate steady using artificial means. Guys and gals, we are witnessing a shift in the way that the world works, the way that the world runs. We are getting people around the world like literally relying on Bitcoin. I sincerely hope that you actually understand what all of this means for the future and just how different is the right word, that things are going to be. This is happening in a lot of places. We had news stories back from 2017 that people were swapping and using for commerce digital currency between China and Russia, like people who were people who were going to markets. And that got squashed really easily when people realized that they can't and won't use the local currency anymore. And something that someone created 16 years ago ends up being a better option. The world is then changing. It's nice to hear about the ETFs and the ABCs and the 123s and all these other things using Bitcoin. But as this continues, the economy around the world then becomes Bitcoin. People will travel around the world and ask places, do you accept crypto? Because I'll try and give it to you this way. I know a lot of people who they do not use cash specifically. They refuse. They need to go places where they can only tap their phone or something else. They literally avoid any other economy that doesn't allow them to pay with their card or their phone or their watch. Think about that. This new generation of people over the next 10 to 15 to 20 years is going to grow up learning that paper currencies kept their family poor. Their father at some point managed to buy $25 worth of Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin amount kept on growing, and now they have a good chunk of change. Not generational wealth, but they don't have to struggle like everyone else. Everyone else will begin to pile into this market. This is how you have consistency and have things actually have strength. This is it. So yeah, I really wonder how many other places are also going through this that we're just not hearing about. There have to be more than 6. I would roughly assume the number's around 20, 30, or 40 different countries. There's a reason why we heard about those other countries previously who are now mining Bitcoin. You know, there's always a reason for it. Well, yeah, the world continues to change. Rich people continue to buy up as much Bitcoin as they humanly can. And let us continue to hope for the actual longevity of the cryptocurrency space by having billions of people around the world realize that they do not have to rely on the old system or their lying government, and that they can have some sort of economic freedom that they can pass on to their kids. I do hope that you've all enjoyed. I do hope you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever you might be. I do hope that it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and supporting, and I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.